Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 430 of the No Sugarcoating Podcast. I'm your host, Amber Romaniuk. How are you? I know I say my name in the intro, but sometimes I say it because I also record this podcast video on YouTube. So, welcome to those of you watching on YouTube and welcome to those of you listening. I hope you are enjoying the first few days of August. How is your summer or winter? I guess if you're in the other side of the world in certain hemispheres like Australia. I hope you're well. Sending you lots of love. Something really cool that I want to celebrate with you all that I literally just discovered last week. So I found this really cool website called Listen Notes, and they literally have every podcast available, which there's like 172 million podcasts. 172,500,000 podcasts. That's a lot of podcasts. And I discovered that the No Sugarcoating podcast is in the top 1%, globally ranked in the top 1% of podcasts. And I just wanted to celebrate all of that with you because thanks to all of you listening, sharing, subscribing, leaving reviews. This podcast is listened to by a lot of beautiful souls all over the planet. And I do this every week for you. And I love recording. And I'm really excited for today's episode. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sending you all so much love, gratitude, appreciation, and light. And why don't we talk about today's topic? So I've had a lot of women who reach out for support with hormones, inflammation, who are struggling with emotional eating, binge eating, food addiction, who are actually also struggling with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I see a direct connection between the emotional eating binge behaviors and how that then fuels inflammation, messes up other hormones, messes with blood sugar, messes with gut health. That is then amplifying the PCOS picture. So not all of you may have PCOS. I think it's good though to check in and hear if any of these symptoms resonate for you and the connection. You may have a friend, a family member who may have been diagnosed with this. But I've had quite a few women in the last few years who have had this diagnosis when we've started working together, and they have seen significant improvement in their symptoms. And some have even seen it fully resolve. And I'm just like speechless because I don't even know what to say. I'm like, really? It fully went away. And like, they, started ovulating again and became fully fertile, and cysts go away and all these beautiful things. The body's always trying to heal. It's just that we're by accidentally getting in the way. So I really wanted to talk about the connection between all this because there's quite a connection. There's a weight connection, an inflammation connection, a hormone connection, a mindset connection, a behavior connection. And for those of you that are listening that have this diagnosis, hopefully I can shed some hope and light and reassurance on the fact that it doesn't have to be permanent. You don't have to suffer. And that's with anything, to be honest with you, not just this, but I wanted to specifically talk about this today because it's just something I'm commonly seeing more of and have seen so much healing and want to give you that reassurance. So this week, we're diving into emotional eating and the PCOS connection, how emotional eating fuels inflammation and PCOS symptoms, say that 5 times fast, and how overcoming emotional eating improves PCOS. And of course, binge eating, emotional eating, food addiction, binging and purging, whatever it is that is going on for you, it's any of the above. So a couple of key announcements as we dive in. All the details for today's show will be at amberapproved.ca/podcast/430 if you want details about different things. Of course, if you hear today's podcast or any of the podcasts and you are now like, holy moly, I really want to inquire about support, I can tell you that one-on-one coaching programs include complimentary hormone testing, an hour health assessment, biweekly 45-minute follow-up sessions, a very high level of support with mindset, emotional, physical support. For those of you that are more, desire to have more energetic and spiritual support, we go there too if you want. And, there's close communication between your sessions, all kinds of other things that are added in. I give all my one-on-one clients access to the membership as well. So there's a lot of really cool things that you get access to with one-on-one support. So if you're listening to these episodes going, I want support, I want to know what's going on with my hormones, I want better energy, I want my bloating to go away, I want to heal my relationship with food, I want food and body freedom, I want to finally have peace with my body, I don't want to fight with her anymore, I want to know my weight loss blocks and clear them, I don't want cravings anymore, I want to be free of them, then this support is for you. So you can go to amberapproved.ca and book a 30-minute body freedom consultation. It's $50 USD. You fill out an intake form and then you book your time and we talk, very formally and in a very safe space on Zoom for that 30 minutes and talk all about you, what's going on, your goals, your struggles, and of course, the programs and answer your questions and see if it feels like a fit. So I just wanted to give a bit of insight on that. But it's a great way to connect and talk more. Secondly, there is a 3-part skin masterclass now open for enrollment that is happening August 29th, 30th, and 31st. We're on the early bird $55 USD for 3 90-minute sessions to help you get to the roots of your acne, eczema, and skin breakouts and skin issues. So if you have acne, cystic acne, breakouts, eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, and you cannot for the life of you figure out why you have them and why they won't go away and all the quick fixes aren't working, I highly encourage you to come and join us for this masterclass. You can go to amberproof.ca/podcast/430, and the link will be in the show notes. You can also go to amberproof.ca and click online programs and is there. It's regularly $88 USD, but we have it on for $55 right now. So come and join us. We already have some beautiful souls inside, and I'm really excited to deeply educate you. All the topics for each day are on the sales page, so you can go and check that out. So without further ado, let's dive into today's topic. So emotional eating and the PCOS connection. So like I said, I've had quite a few clients, and even my one client, Alex, she did a podcast interview and a video testimonial that you can watch on my website. And she talked about how she was diagnosed with PCOS before she came to me. And she was also struggling with binge eating really bad. And what she kept seeing is her cravings get worse, her blood sugar get worse, inflammation and gut health got worse, and the symptoms of PCOS kept getting worse. And she wasn't really ovulating anymore. And as we worked together and did the healing, she started ovulating. Her cycle was really regular. All of her symptoms went away, like just a game changer. So, there's beautiful stories like that I've witnessed and not expected to see some of the miracles that have happened. So what I want to talk a little bit about first is what PCOS is. How do you get it diagnosed? And please always keep in mind that I really believe the body can always heal. But polycystic ovarian or ovary syndrome, or ovarian syndrome, some people call it, is and believe it or not, it's a diagnosis that, of course, with lifestyle changes and doing the inner healing can improve significantly. So I don't like the word diagnoses, but obviously the reality is sometimes we have things that take time to shift. But it's a hormone imbalance condition. It affects 1 in 10 women. And like that's, some go undiagnosed, which is no good. But there's different symptoms, issues with ovulation, increased production of androgens, which is the male hormones like testosterone and DHEA, and polycystic means multiple cysts. So of course, there's usually an ultrasound that is done to see if there are cysts and follicles on the ovaries. And obviously, if these things are going on, then that diagnosis can be given. The large number of follicles can occur in PCOS due to the problems with ovulation. And so that's one of the reasons why they're then building and occurring and seen in the ultrasound. So with this condition, it can be, there can be a lot going on, and it may take a bit of digging to get to it. So that's why I always say, like, get testing done right away, get an ultrasound done right away. Like, because if you do those things and you see all the anomalies plus your symptoms, it may make it easier. But if you just do testing and you don't get the ultrasound and you can't see, right, if that component is going on, I think it's important. So it's really is a cluster of symptoms that is a result to problems with ovulation, high levels of androgens. Okay. Some women may not get the symptoms I'm about to mention with it, or a very small amount of symptoms. This is why it's always important to work with your natural healthcare team, your doctor, whoever you trust to really help you to rule out and or see if this is going on for you. So, common signs of PCOS: irregular cycles, acne, a lot of excessive facial hair, not just 1 or 2, but a lot, hair loss, cycles that are constantly longer than 35 days, you're not ovulating, you have multiple follicles on your ovaries on the ultrasound, acne, especially around the chin, the jawline, the chest, the upper back, hair loss and thinning, like I said, insulin resistance and blood sugar issues, anxiety, depression, mood swings, fatigue, low libido, cravings, weight gain, especially around the abdomen, which can also be cortisol as well, or struggles losing weight. You have blood tests that show high LH, which is luteinizing hormone, to follicle stimulating hormone, which is FSH, and blood tests show excess levels of testosterone or DHEA or both. So obviously it's very different for everybody as far as what's going on. But there's just different things that the right person is going to do, like the ultrasounds, testing, getting you to monitor your ovulation, etc. So now that you know a little bit more about what it is, if you were unfamiliar, if you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like this might be going on, well, go and dig and get testing and get things done, right? I'm happy to do hormone testing with you. You can go to your doctor and ask for a hormone test, or you can ask for hormone testing from your doctor too. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they won't, but ask for the ultrasound especially, because I think that's really, really, really important. So what I see and why I wanted to connect this to emotional eating is because there's a lot of different things that I feel are like, even if obviously if you're already in the diagnosis, one of the reasons you may not see improvement or gaining relief in your symptoms is because you may be dealing with emotional eating, binge eating, binging, and purging, or some form of emotional relationship with food, fighting with your body, weight fight, body image struggles, high stress, people pleasing, overbooked schedules, unworthiness, or all of the above. And if we're in that kind of focus, it amplifies the things that fuel PCOS. So emotional eating, right? I'll just go with that term, but any of the emotional relationship with food stuff fuels imbalances with blood sugar. Okay. So when we overeat, eat a lot of processed carbohydrates and refined sugar, it messes with our blood sugar. It fuels inflammation. It messes with our cortisol levels, which of course, cortisol is our stress hormone. And if our stress hormone is off, that messes with progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA, and testosterone and DHEA are those androgens that if they get too high, right? And this can amplify your PCOS symptoms. So as I mentioned earlier, insulin resistance is a hormonal condition which can contribute to weight gain, blood sugar issues, increased appetite levels, right? Eventually over a long period of time, type 2 diabetes, but I feel like this is all preventable. But if we're in an insulin resistance, we can have this insulin resistance contribute to producing too many of those androgens, the testosterone, the DHEA. And it's something that we can shift by lowering inflammation, healing our relationship with food, addressing the, better gut health, better cortisol levels, all of these different things that I've been talking about. So we can always test for your insulin and glucose and things like that. But it's so important to understand that the relationship with food piece of that is going on. It is contributing to inflammation, insulin resistance, messing with your blood sugar. And when people always say, well, what can I do to improve my PCOS? I always ask, like, what's your relationship like with food? So I'm going to just give some examples of how these are all connected to PCOS in a bit more specific. But essentially, if you already have this diagnosis, you may already notice you have inflammation in the body, redness, puffiness, swelling, heat retention. Do you have more abdominal weight gain? That could be tied to the PCOS and the insulin resistance. It could also be tied to high or low cortisol, candida overgrowth, and fungal infections or fungal overgrowth in the large intestine, food sensitivities, leaky gut, right? And then, of course, the overeating, the stress eating, the guilt and the negative shame, embarrassment, or negative emotions you feel after you binge or emotionally eat. All of that, of course, fuels inflammation, overwhelms the nervous system, and it's really hard for us to improve, the quality of our health and improve symptoms and regulate hormones and blood sugars and all these things tied to PCOS or any diagnoses for that matter, if we are fueling the fire. Because essentially when we already have amplified symptoms and hormone imbalances, things like emotional eating, binge eating, weight body battles, chasing numbers on scales, heavy diet restriction, all or nothing mentalities, back and forth from binging, overeating, emotionally eating to restriction diets and rigidity, all stress the body out so much. Not eating enough, eating on the run, not chewing your food properly, overbooking your schedule, not getting enough sleep, dehydration. All of these things fuel inflammation, and that just fans this fire of everything. So Of course, a lot of the women that I talk to have sugar addiction, heavy sugar cravings, sugars are coping. I mean, for you, it could be other things, but with sugar, when there's an insulin resistance component to PCOS, your body doesn't handle large spikes in your blood sugar levels the same way as someone without insulin resistance. So every time you consume more sugar, when you have PCOS and you were triggered via emotional eating or cravings, or you have a sugar addiction, your body continues to become more insulin resistant. And the more insulin resistance means it can become easier to gain weight, or the acne could be getting worse, the hair loss could be getting worse. And this can reduce fertility. And we don't want that. And none of this is permanent. Like I'm always saying, like the body's always trying to heal. And the more we shift and heal our relationship with food in our body, guess what? To me, the insulin resistance starts to resolve. The acne starts to clear. The hair starts to thicken and grow back. Fertility improves. Your body starts to feel safe enough to release the protection. So to me, I really am just a firm believer that we can shift all of this. But if you're consuming a lot of refined sugar, this, of course, fuels cravings. Refined sugar is 10 times more addictive than cocaine. It fuels emotional eating, fuels binges, because we get that massive dopamine high, and then you crave it and you want it more. And then of course it's contributing to everything I just talked about as far as PCOS is concerned, and a lot of other conditions. Right. So it's just this component of over consuming of even like processed breads and carbohydrates would do this similar thing with the insulin resistance. I don't believe in heavy restriction. And when my client Alex came to me, she's like, I got told I need to go on an elimination diet. I need to do low carb. I'm like, you need carbohydrates. We just want to help you heal your relationship with food so you're not binging on refined sugar. So let's make sure you're getting enough carbohydrates. And it didn't make her insulin resistance worse. It got better because she healed her relationship with food. Her cravings went away. She was eating more whole foods. And because all the stress was coming off of her body because she wasn't binge eating, her blood sugar regulated beautifully, and having more nourishing carbohydrates helped her cortisol levels regulate. And then that was no longer negatively impacting the rest of this picture. But it was just really interesting to see the connection and see the shift and see how positively like her body, shifted, and how fast she started ovulating again after we started with that. So I don't believe in the reduction of whole food carbohydrates like starchy vegetables, fruits, things like that. I'm not a huge advocate of eating tons of like white flours, white breads, refined sugar all the time. I think that those things fuel this insulin resistance or blood sugar issues, appetite irregularities, cravings, because they don't help to regulate our blood sugar. So I think that it's really important that we, really start to understand, do I have emotional eating? Am I binge eating? Do I have a sugar addiction or a reliance on sugar? And by all means, you can always go to amberproof.ca and take the free emotional eating quiz. If you're wondering if you're struggling, you can just go to the website. It's in the show notes below here on the YouTube. But yeah, you can totally see if you are, maybe you don't even know yet. And listen to other episodes of the podcast and you'll probably find out really fast where you're at. So I think that it's something that we often will go, okay, well, I have this diagnosis, so I need to like take these vitamins, which are great, and change the way I eat, which is great. But if you don't address the thing that's massively fueling the fire, which in most cases is the emotional eating, binge eating, food addiction, or binging and purging, a lot of the other stuff won't feel as effective or feel like it's really working, or you may even feel that like you're getting worse. I had a conversation with a lovely woman the other day in a consultation, and there's so many inflammation and pain and gut issues and hormone issues and extreme fatigue and all of these physical symptoms and suffering going on for her. And she said, and I asked, I'm like, what do you think is fueling all of this? And she said, well, I think my hormones definitely have something to do with them, like 100%. And I'm like, what's bigger than that is this whole self-sabotage of the food, this binge eating, this all or nothing mentality, these extremes with food that you're in, because it's stressing every aspect of your body out. Because what you have to think about with emotional eating, and in this case with PCOS, number one, you're usually in an all or nothing mentality with food, which means there's not a lot of balance. So you're either all in trying to restrict and diet and cut things out, or you're all in binging and over consuming. That's stressful for anyone. And even more for someone who has some kind of imbalance symptom or diagnoses. And then when the more sugar, the more processed carbohydrates, the more processed stuff we eat, the more it messes with our blood sugar. In this case, the insulin resistance is really impacted. When we're overeating regularly and we're stressing and feeling guilty and frustrated and we don't have healthy ways to cope and we're overbooked and people pleasing and in the perfection mentality, which are mindsets that fuel emotional eating, binge eating, right? And then fuel these symptoms I'm talking about. Our nervous systems get overwhelmed. We get high or low cortisol, adrenal fatigue, adrenal burnout. You're drained, you're exhausted, you're tired, you're more emotional, more moody. You have a shorter fuse. You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel in touch with your body, right? And that messes with your cortisol. And the more your cortisol goes off, like I've always talked about, it can mess with your thyroid, which it can impact your cycle. It can mess with your progesterone and estrogen, which messes with your cycle and can mess with PCOS. Your testosterone levels can get too low or too high. Your DHEA levels can get too low or too high, in this case, too high, right? And all of this could be being amplified by the self-sabotage with food. These diagnoses and symptoms don't just come out of nowhere. There's usually many things going on mentally, emotionally, physically, and even energetically that we have not necessarily been educated or taught how to deal with. And I always talk to women and say, like, I have a nursing background, or I have a nutrition background. Like, I should just know what to do to deal with this. And I say, I want you to celebrate the knowledge and the education that you have. And with all due respect, just like it is for each one of us, none of us have all the knowledge for this. I'm like, I never used to know anything about it until I went through it and really started to like heal from it. But I didn't know, right? Why should you know? Did you learn in school how to heal emotional eating and how to love yourself and all these things? No, don't hold it against yourself or be hard on yourself because you just think you should know better. This is so deep and intertwined with the mindset, the ego, the people pleasing, the perfection, the all or nothing mentalities, the conditioning and programming we've received, our physical symptoms, our imbalances, the chasing of the dopamine high with food, the addictive thing going on, the patterns we're wiring in the brain. It is deep, right? So stop being hard on yourself and stop sitting in this place where you're like, I just should know. I should know. I should know. I have this education. If you have education, celebrate it. And if you're still struggling with these things deeply, can you have an open mind that maybe you don't know it all, and that's also okay. And maybe getting support to learn and be educated and supported and guided on the missing pieces could be the very missing piece of the puzzle that's actually going to help you get where you want to go. Because the ego will want us to be like, well, I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it. That's your ego, and your ego is literally holding you back in that kind of case. Don't let your ego hold you back. But this is some of the stuff that fuels this diagnosis. And then the more that we, keep in these behaviors, the worse everything, things just slowly decline over time. And then it's hard for the body to heal and regulate and overcome, these symptoms and things that are going on. So emotional eating is a massive amplifier of so many different things, including this picture. So that's really the first thing I wanted to break down, is this whole connection to PCOS in that regard. Now, what I want to go to is the fueling of the inflammation, how emotional eating fuels inflammation, and the PCOS. So there is an inflammatory component to PCOS. A lot of PCOS is driven by inflammation, and people don't realize that. And it's like a low grade chronic inflammation that really plays a role in all kinds of PCOS. And then there's actually inflammatory PCOS, which is a little different. So I'm just going to go generally through like how the inflammation impacts this. Because some of the women who have PCOS don't have insulin resistance, and it's more inflammatory PCOS. There's more gut issues as well when we have elevated inflammation. So what's super important to know, first off, what is inflammation? Redness, swelling, pain, heat. So retention, retaining a lot of water. It may feel like weight gain, but we can retain up to 20 pounds of water, believe it or not. You have lots of pain, inflammation. So old nagging injuries bother you, joint pain, back aches, plantar fasciitis that keeps flaring up, and things that just keep flaring up and you just feel a lot of pain. That's all a sign of inflammation. Maybe you have arthritis or some kind of autoimmune diagnosis, right? That is all signs of inflammation. Redness. So I talked about the skin masterclass earlier, which is coming August 29th, 30th, and 31st. Well, Redness. Look at how when you get acne, it can get really red and cystic looking. That is tied to inflammation. Rosacea is tied to inflammation, which is tied to gut and hormone imbalances. I've had many women come to me with rosacea, have it completely clear up because we got rid of the inflammation. They heal their relationship with food and balance their gut. Eczema. That's another one that is one of the signs is there's a lot of inflammation in the body because of the redness with the eczema flare-ups. So we can look to skin and look at the redness that may be occurring with our breakout, our acne, our eczema, and our rosacea. And that is a sign that there's a lot of internal inflammation going on in the body from a skin surface level. You have a lot of bloating and pain and discomfort digestively, and you feel like you keep getting more sensitive to more foods. That's a sign that there's a lot of inflammation. If you really struggle to lose weight or you have elevated C-reactive protein levels, signs of elevated inflammation, fatigue, low mood, also signs of elevated inflammation. So there's quite a few ways that we can look at it. But essentially for me, how I know I get inflamed is I get really warm and I get really puffy. Those are my signs. We all have different signs, right? For some people, I know they get eczema. For some, it's skin breakouts. For some, it's joint pain. So it's going to look different for each of us. So what kind of things do you notice with inflammation? Do you notice anything at all? But I want you to just kind of check in on that. And when we're emotionally eating, of course, there's a few things that amplify and, fuel emotional eating that then fuels this whole PCOS piece. So before I'm even eating the food, if I'm in stress and I'm overbooked and I'm overwhelmed and I'm depleted, I am feeling inflammation in my body because my nervous system's overwhelmed. My cortisol is probably through the roof. And the longer your cortisol is high and you're in a stress response, the body starts to swell and retain water, and that fuels and contributes to inflammation. And then you go into emotional eating because you're stressed. There's some kind of emotional trigger or craving or urge. And then you eat too much. You're eating more processed foods. You're over consuming even healthier foods. And the overconsumption and the eating too fast and the eating large volumes fuels inflammation because number one, a lot of the foods are inflammatory, like refined sugar, wheat, dairy, soy, corn, GMO here in North America, not so much in Europe. Alcohol, MSG, aspartame, all these toxic products we're putting on our skin, it all just fuels inflammation, stresses out the liver, right? And so the more of this that we consume with the binge eating, emotional eating, and then if we're purging, that just fuels even more inflammation because it's such a destructive, harsh habit on the body. And I know you're not doing it on purpose. I've been there, but it's so important that if we're in that cycle that we really get support to unwire that pattern so that we can start seeing the healing happen more within our bodies. But if you're binging, you're emotional eating, whatever's going on for you, that mass volume of consumption or the overconsumption regularly and the poor quality of the food fuels inflammation. These are all inflammatory foods that I just mentioned. And then that literally is like adding gas to a forest fire. And the body then gets more puffy, retains more water. Your eczema gets worse. Your psoriasis, your acne, your skin breakouts get worse. Your rosacea gets worse. Your bloating gets worse. You feel like you're gaining more weight more easily. You feel more tired, more moody. You then may even have more of a desire to go for sugar, go for the emotional eating because you want the dopamine high. Because the higher levels of inflammation we have, the lower our dopamine levels are. And that's important for mood. And I did a whole episode on all of that last year on the podcast, like inflammation, mood, dopamine. So you can check that out. It's a very eye-opening episode. But inflammation just really is not good and negatively impacts everything. Yeah, we're going to have inflammation here and there, but when we have this chronic low-grade inflammation that's just getting fueled and fed by emotional eating, binge eating, etc., it is going to amplify current conditions, diagnoses, or symptoms. So this is why addressing emotional eating and binge eating is so important when we tie it into inflammation, because inflammation is fueling the eczema, the psoriasis, the skin conditions, the unexplained fatigue, the gut issues, the joint pain, the headaches, all of these things. And the more inflammation we have, the more the cortisol goes off, the more that messes with testosterone, DHEA, your progesterone, your estrogen, the more it depletes your vitamin B12, which is your energy vitamin, your minerals like iron, which also contributes to energy. The more this messes with your blood sugar and amps up that insulin resistance that can make it feel easier to gain weight. And that all contributes to a lot of the symptoms with this PCOS picture. So I hope this is making sense so far. I just want to try and essentially tie it all together because, like I said, it's one thing to directly address and support the PCOS, but if you're struggling with emotional eating and binge eating and you're not addressing that, or you're heavily overbooked, you barely have any time for yourself, you're people pleasing, perfection, all or nothing mentalities, it's so important to address these behaviors along with the PCOS because these mindsets and behaviors are negatively impacting your diagnoses. This is why I'm always preaching the holistic approach, addressing the roots physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, because it's impacting everything. And of course, when if you go and Google, how should I, address my PCOS, it says lower inflammation. That's one of the first things. So adding in more anti-inflammatory foods, teas, spices is going to help. But if you're struggling with emotional eating, like I've been saying, we want to address that first while supporting your physical body to help improve your symptoms. Because it's just amplifying everything. So that's the connection there with emotional eating, fueling inflammation and PCOS. And of course, the more inflammation we have, the more it messes with our cortisol levels back. So it's not just cortisol messes with inflammation and amplifies it. It's also inflammation stresses out the body, stresses out our nervous system, and messes with our cortisol levels. And the more off our cortisol is, the more it messes with our blood sugar and our appetite levels and increases our cravings for sugar, carbs, etc. And then we have more cravings for sugar and carbs, and then you're eating more sugar and carbs, and it's fueling that insulin resistance, right? And that's contributing to this. So everything is very intertwined and connected. And cortisol issues will have contribution to this PCOS picture as well. So when we have an overwhelmed nervous system, you're not sleeping well, you are in a space where you're on technology a lot and your system is really overstimulated with all the EMFs, there is a cortisol component that is, being impacted. You're drinking too much coffee, too much caffeine, over exercising. So this is where it's very important to make sure we're supporting our adrenal health and our nervous system, because having cortisol issues will actually flare up skin issues worse and breakouts. And I'm going to talk more about that in the skin masterclass. Again, you can go to amberapproved.ca/podcast/430 and click the link to sign up. You can also just go to the online program page on my website as well. But inflammation that redness can come from the cortisol issue. I see that all the time with women who have skin issues. I'm going to do a whole skin episode coming up because I've learned a lot about this and I've helped a lot of women, especially the last 3 or 4 years of skin issues, completely clear it up in some a shockingly short period of time. I never have expectation of how long something is going to take, but for some of these women, I'm to go from having cystic, horrible acne to seeing their faces pretty much cleared up in a month or two. I don't even have the words. I'm just holy moly. It's just the proof that when you address the roots and you really do the deeper work, the body's just wanting to heal and make that shift. Right. So it's really cool to see that happening for these women. But yeah, there's this nervous system component that is very important to address that can be hard sometimes because I know you have life, you may have young kids, you may have just, had babies and you have to get up all the time, or your job's really demanding, or you're really busy, or maybe you're the people pleaser and the perfectionist. And that is just really fueling, right? An overwhelmed nervous system. Is so important that we can be willing and open to bring in some balance to support your body in healing, because the honest truth is it's really hard to heal and gain relief if we don't make some lifestyle changes. Obviously, they're made at the pace that feels good for you, and we meet you with your schedule. And I'm still on Zoom. Okay. I just hit X on the other recording, so I'm glad I have the Zoom. Oops. So essentially, when we are dealing with this, we need to understand the connections between our behavior, our beliefs, because our cells are always listening to our thoughts. And if we're always stressed and always negative and always overwhelmed, always hanging on to our emotions, shoving them down and suppressing them with food, shopping, alcohol, whatever it is, not only are we suppressing our emotions, which overwhelms the nervous system, but we're feeling all these things that I've been talking about today. And so how do we start dealing with this? How is overcoming emotional eating going to help improve your PCOS? Well, it's going to improve it in every way and maybe even possibly help it fully go away. And the biggest reasons behind that are, well, it's the simple fact that, of course, when you take a massive stressor off that's been fueling a lot of this, the body gets to breathe, the nervous system gets to regulate, your hormones get to start regulating or fully regulate, inflammation reduces significantly, your blood sugar gets to regulate and calm down significantly, retention reduces, your body starts releasing protection, you feel more connected and in tune with your body. That is all so powerful. And that can be done. You start ovulating, your cycle becomes more regular. It's not like 39, 40 days anymore. Now it's 28 to 32 days, right? Maybe the odd time it's a bit longer. That's okay. Stress can dictate that. But when you stop the emotional eating, your appetite levels regulate. Your blood sugar, like I said, your cravings can go away completely. You're eating a lot more nourishing foods. You have more balance with food. You're mindfully eating a lot more whole foods. And of course, you still enjoy mindful indulgence, but a mindful indulgence here and there doesn't negatively impact any aspect of what I'm talking about because your body can handle the balance and it's just a small amount. Versus if we're always emotionally eating, we're always over consuming, we're always overindulging. Unfortunately, well, what's going to happen? We're going to continue to struggle with amplifying these symptoms. I see so many women with irregular cycles and infertility and low progesterone and all kinds of things, even if obviously if you're not dealing with PCOS. And as they heal their relationship with food, and I'm getting the thumbs up from Zoom. I don't know how to turn that off. If anyone knows, let me know on my recording here on YouTube. But it's so cool when they start to heal their relationship with food, how their cycle regulates, PMS symptoms go away. So it's the same with this. The ovulation comes back, the cycle becomes more regular, PMS symptoms go away, the insulin resistance resolves itself, the inflammation calms down. And it comes down to, are you willing to really address the roots? Yes, we can investigate, we can do hormone testing, a full health assessment, see what's going on with your gut health, specifically look at estrogen, progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, your morning cortisol, your thyroid, vitamins, minerals, inflammatory markers, all these different things. We can look at all of that. We can get those answers. And then from there, we can support with foods, tea, spices, supplements, self-care tools, nervous system calming tools. And then it's about healing your relationship with food, healing your relationship with your body, making peace with your body, learning how to love yourself, building worthiness, healing the people-pleasing imperfection mentalities. Because as long as you're in that, you're coming from unworthiness and you're chasing your worth outside of you. And if you're overbooked and overwhelmed, that really is going to do a number on your hormones, your blood sugar, and all these things I've been talking about today. You're always hearing me talk about dealing with the ego. You're always hearing me talk about, working on your mindset. And I can't stress it enough because it's a really important missing piece of the puzzle that a lot of people don't actually deal with when they're going on a healing journey. And I like to bring it up because it can feel easier or more comfortable to go to the supplements first, or to try and change the way you eat first, or to try some kind of diet protocol. However, what I find, and like I've talked about before, elimination diets, restrictive diets, actually can fuel more binges and emotional eating because we go into the rebellion mentality. And if we're told you can't eat this, the ego goes, oh, watch me, I'm going to eat it even more now. And then that just makes everything worse. And then you feel guilty and you feel stuck, like nothing is ever going to work because you feel like you're the one that's messing up your success, right? When that's not true. But of course, we feel guilt because sometimes we're told with these protocols, this is the only thing that's going to help you heal. And if you don't follow this protocol to a T, you won't get better. And that's false. There's always many ways, but it's just us picking the ways that align for us. And nothing should ever be heavily restricted. So in this case, it's not about putting you on a restrictive elimination diet or cutting a bunch of carbs. It's about healing the relationship with food, making sure your blood sugar is supported, making sure you're getting enough whole foods, carbohydrates with your fats and your proteins, which it never feels restrictive, and clearing out this stressor of fighting with your body or fighting with food or both. This is imperative. So we do that We work on that. We support those things gently and lovingly while also supporting your hormones, reducing inflammation, supporting good gut health, supporting good blood sugar, whatever's going on for you physically. We intertwine and we work on them together. And I find that it's such a beautiful combination of doing both together, because we want you to gain physical relief and monitor your cycle, monitor your ovulation, all these things we can do in your sessions whilst identifying your emotional eating and binge triggers. What triggers you to go to food? What are the first signs you're triggered, right? What do you do once you realize you're triggered? How do you navigate through that, right? It might look a little different with each different trigger. And that's where, having the support, the accountability, someone to help you with your ego. Oh my goodness. That ego, I don't know exactly when, but in the next coming months, I'm going to record an episode where I have a conversation with the ego, and I'm going to it'll be like Amber has a conversation with her ego, and it'll be me talking in my regular. And then my ego is going to be talking faster and more critical and blah, 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 blah. Right. So you'll really be able to tell the difference in the energy and the vibe. And I've started a series of reels on Instagram, an ego mindset series where I'm literally doing little skits and giving examples of the ego chatter. So check that out on Instagram as well. But I think it's so important that we do this ego work because the ego is part of what's behind fueling the emotional binge eating. The ego is part of what's behind the all or nothing perfection, people pleasing, proving mentalities. The ego is part of what is behind you being hard on yourself because you might have issues with ovulation or PCOS or fertility or whatever it is, and trying to convince you that you're always going to be stuck with this when you don't have to be. Miracles are always available. And the ego is the part of you that tells you you're not good enough and that this isn't going to work and why bother and you shouldn't even listen to the podcast, all the BS, right? So that's the ego. And so if we work on the ego and we learn how to tame the ego and take our power back from our ego while we're understanding our emotional eating triggers and we're learning what we really need instead of food to cope, right? We learn healthy ways to feel through our emotions, and it starts to get easier to feel and it's not so uncomfortable anymore. We build confidence and we gain more progress with our physical healing because we're not inhibiting the physical healing via doing things like binging, emotionally eating, self-sabotaging. So it's really powerful, really, really powerful to address the self-sabotage of food in your body whilst supporting your physical body. You could gain a lot of relief physically with some of the first recommendations that I make if we were to work together. I have clients who will start adding in gut supporting things, a probiotic, certain teas, collagens, bone broths, or even start eating mindfully. Or maybe it's a blood sugar support that we add. And they're like, oh my gosh, my cravings have significantly reduced, right? I'll tell you a few examples. So in the last 3 weeks, with new clients that I've started with, I had one client in 3 weeks after getting hormone results back, skin's clear, bloating and digestive discomfort gone, got her period back after not having it for 4 years. That was in 3 weeks. That's significant. And we just made small changes. Second client, within a month of working together, she went from emotionally eating most days of the week, horrible bloating, low energy, feeling completely out of her power. And she's a very powerful empath, right? No more cravings, eating regularly through the day, hasn't had binge eating or emotional eating triggers come up, improved energy, no more breast tenderness or PMS symptoms. In a month, it's significant, the shifting that occurs. And it's different for everyone. We don't want to compare the journeys. Some people it takes longer, some people it takes less. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. So don't be hard on yourself. Don't compare. But this is the magic that gets to occur when we address the roots physically, emotionally, mentally, and energetically, rather than just a physical focus or a meal plan or a supplement plan. Okay. We want to bring together foods, teas, spices, supplements, right? Maybe some homeopathy, lifestyle, nervous system, mindset work. We bring it together and then you experience the healing. So as we overcome emotional eating, you reduce inflammation, you regulate your blood sugar, you regulate your hormones, your digestive health gets so much better, your mood and confidence get better, you feel more connected to your body, you learn how to love yourself, you build this newfound respect and connection with your body, you access your intuition more, your frequency goes higher, it's easier for your body to heal, your immunity gets better, and then we can actually regulate and reduce your testosterone and DHEA back to healthy levels. We want to make sure your detoxification systems are working properly and gently open them up, like your lymph and your liver and your bowels, right? And then your skin clears, your PMS goes away, You get pregnant and it's a miracle. Like last year or the year before, I had 6 women get pregnant. After some of them were told they couldn't. Some of them were trying so hard and they felt so pressured. And then we did, the work with emotional eating and all these other things. Boom. Miracles, right? Miracles happen when we do the deeper work. It's such a blessing and honor. And I hope this helps give you just a little bit more reassurance and hope and light that you can totally do this too. And it's not even a hope, it's a knowing, it's a confidence, and it's a you deciding if you are wanting to do the deeper work and really go on the healing journey, and knowing that doing so is going to give you the healing, the miracles, the progress, the confidence, the freedom that you deserve. And that's regardless of whoever or whatever you decide to do on your journey. That's up to you. But I want you to decide, actually, not just hope, but decide that I am healing. I'm fully going to heal whatever it is that's going on for me. I'm going to break free, and I'm going to build the food and body freedom that I seek and deserve. I'm going to build the confidence and the love, and I'm going to learn how to have balance with my mind, this food, this body. I'm going to balance my hormones. I'm going to release the protection. I'm going to make peace with food, like whatever it is. I'm deciding that I can do this. You may go, well, I don't know how right now. That's fine. Get support, right? Listen to podcasts, whatever you feel, whatever is calling you on your path. I know that you're going to pick whatever feels best for you, but obviously if you're resonating with this and you do want to reach out for support and talk about going on the journey together, I'm always happy to have that conversation. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This is a condition that can really be significantly improved. And like I've seen some women, it just completely resolves itself. And the doctor's like, you don't have this anymore. And it's like, and the doctor's like, wait, what? And then like, what did you do? And they're like, well, I did this and this. And they're like, well, good for you. You're good to go. Right. So that is incredible. That is incredible. So the show notes for today's episode can be found at amberapproved.ca/podcast/430. Like I said earlier, if you want to book a consultation, you can go to amberapproved.ca, click schedule a consultation. You can also go to the website and take the free emotional eating quiz if you wonder if you are struggling. You will also get some emotional eating podcast resources and things like that after you take the quiz to just help, start to plant some seeds and give some insight into and awareness into addressing it. And last but not least, like I mentioned earlier, there is the skin masterclass. It is 3 90-minute sessions. We're going to be live, but you'll get lifetime access to the replays. If you want more details on that, amberapproved.ca/podcast/430. And there will be a link to click to go and sign up. I'm really excited to teach that. I haven't really done much on skin, but after all the women that have reached out over the last few years with skin issues that have had a lot of success with clearing up their skin in many different regards, I wanted to really provide the education and knowledge that I have seen and the patterns and the similarities that I'm seeing in a lot of these symptoms and breakouts, so to help you understand that you're not alone. There are things that can be done. And of course, the Band-Aid quick fix approaches, like if you've only been provided with those and you haven't gained relief, it's not your fault. There's other things to address, and I want to give you insight and shine the light on that. So I'm sending you so much love. I'm cheering you on. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. And as always, there's no better time than the present to take action on your health. So take action now. We will see you for a brand new episode next Sunday. In the meantime, take care. Sending lots of love.